Hey there, Steve here. Hope you're doing well. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. In this video, I want to define some common terms that are often used to describe math rock, as well as give you some examples to help you better understand, because everybody loves examples. It's going to be a wild, fun ride, so get comfortable and perhaps prepare your favorite hot beverage. You may have heard terms such as odd time, angular, atypical rhythmic structures, counterpoint, syncopation to describe math rock, or you might have even used these technical terms to describe math rock yourself to somebody who's not really heard of it before. Even I struggle to define what math rock is without going into these technical musical terms, but I do believe that getting a better understanding of what these terms mean will help you not only learn what math rock is or help us better define what math rock is, but it'll also help you when learning math rock, be it on guitar, drums, bass, or whatever instrument that you're going to use when learning math rock. So let's go through a bunch of these terms, let's try and better define them, and then let's show you some examples to help you understand. So first, let's start with the big one. Let's start with odd time, and this is the one that you usually hear the most when people say how can you define math rock, is the use of odd time signatures. So what is meant by an odd time signature? So put simply, it's the bar count that's not divisible by 2 or 3, so it's not common time or compound time. Some examples of this are 5/4 and 7/8. So in a bar of 5/4 you would have 5 quarter notes as the count, as the beat, and in 7/8 you would have 7/8 notes as the count, as for each bar. An easy and excellent example to understand this is the song Don Aman by one of the math rock pioneering bands Slint. So listen how the bar of 5/4 in this phrase gives it quite an irregular feeling, and listen also how the guitar's what it's playing is quite dissonant, which is very typical of earlier styles of math rock. There's plenty of examples on that record of odd time. Another one is Nosferatu Man, which is in a count of 5. So if you listen to that song, you can count along in 5. You can go more complex with odd time signatures, with frequently changing time signatures occurring throughout the entire song or just a particular part of a song. There's an excellent band for this, is the band TTNG, and a particular example I have here is the song Baboon from their Animals release. I could go on all day about bands that use odd time signatures, so if you've got any excellent examples, please leave them down below in the comments. It should be noted, however, that a lot of math rock is also in more conventional time signatures, such as 4/4. However, the way that they subdivide or accent certain beats is what gives it perhaps an odd time feel, when it necessarily isn't in odd time. So when we come to later sections looking at syncopation and counterpoint, you'll better understand how you can do this in common time, in 4/4 time. So next, let's move on to another big part of math rock, is atypical rhythmic structures. So what is meant by this? So in a more popular style, in more conventional pop styles of music, there's certain patterns usually of rhythmic phrasing that are often repeated. However, in math rock we have the use of syncopation, which is where a variety of rhythms are played at the same time, and not necessarily the strong beats are accented, usually more of the weaker beats are accented, and this gives a more offbeat, more disjointed feel, and it interrupts the regular flow of just a rhythmic phrase. One really cool thing that I find is quite synonymous with math rock is the use of irregular stopping and starting. When I first heard this kind of thing done, it's really what drew me to math rock, what made me really excited. And I first heard this done probably when I was watching a band called Shapes, and they're from Birmingham in England, and when I was watching them live they have this song called Retreat Attack, which is one of the first songs I actually heard with a loop pedal going out on through a song as well. So they have this 6/8 phrase that's repeating on this loop pedal, and they play different rhythmic phrases over the top of that. But later on in the song there's this snare roll, and the guitar, the bass and the drums are all accenting at the same time, and there's a lot of irregular stopping and starting. have another excellent example of this on a later EP release from The Pasture and the Oil, and the song is called You Butcher. And just listen again to the irregular stopping and starting and how just tight and wonderful it is. Again, with our time, there's, like I said, there's plenty I could go on for days about this. There's plenty of bands that do this, and it's one of the most exciting things for me about math rock. So please leave any examples that you think are really cool, things that excite you about this kind of thing down below in the comments. Next, let's move on to counterpoint. I feel like this is another key ingredient for math rock, and it's hard to define simply, but I'll try my best. So it's basically where you have two or more musical lines. So let's say you have two guitar parts that are playing at the same time. They are dependent on each other in harmonically speaking, so they should sound good together. However, they are independent in their rhythmic contour or what they are playing. Again, an example will best demonstrate this. And this time we have the wonderful Meet Me in St. Louis, and this is from their Variations on Swing release. The song is called Eins, Zwei, Drei, Hasselhoff. I had to write that down. And just listen how one guitar part is playing a repeating phrase where the other guitar part is just playing its own thing and changing all the time. They fit together, they sound good together, but what they're playing is quite independent from each other. And there are plenty of examples of this happening all over this record. And please, like I asked for the other examples, the other definitions, please leave some of your favorite examples of this down below. So lastly, let's move on to angular melodies. An angular melody moves by bigger leaps in the melody. It sounds more rigid. So if you were to draw the dots on the stave, between the lines in the melody, you'd have this much more rigid feeling, whereas we're in more conventional styles of melody writing, it'd have this more smoother line if you were to join the dots between the melody. An excellent example of this is the intro to the song Trash Generator by Tera Melos. Just listen to how big the leaps are in the melody, giving them this angular feeling.
So many people I do not want to see. So many people don't want them standing next to me. In my mind I crawling down the street. 7 my feet, 7 my feet, 7 my feet. I 777.
So today we learned about a few common definitions used to define math rock. Of course there's many more to use, and this is also ignoring the giant swath of sub-styles of math rock, those kinds of bands, and also ignoring the techniques that are often synonymous with math rock. So if you're looking at guitar, you'd have things such as finger tapping, finger picking, and hybrid picking. I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Do you think I did a good job? Would you add any more terms? Would you add any more definitions to that? One that I think I would add is atypical song structure as well. So typically in a math rock song, you don't have a conventional A, B, A, C, and then back to the chorus again at the ends there. In math rock it can be any kind of structure. There's not really much thought put into the structure a lot of the time. Certainly that's the way I've written a lot of songs in the past. So lastly, I will leave you with a definition of math rock that I gave back a few years ago when I was doing an interview. When it comes to defining math rock, there are many varying definitions out there. I have thought about it and haven't really come to any solid conclusions. However, one thing I have noticed is that most people will agree, just like myself, that it is an ambiguous term and genre to define. If you consider the influential genres of math rock, such as jazz, progressive, experimental, punk, emo, post-rock, and various other subgenres of each style of music, it becomes clearer why bands that are often labelled as math rock, even though they sound quite different to extremely different from one another, are often labelled as such. To state the obvious, this is perhaps why we see subgenres such as math pop, math metal, mathcore used to label different variations of math rock. However, this still doesn't give a clear definition to what math rock is. Perhaps we need to turn our attention to what people consider to be the characteristic features of math rock to get a better answer. Again, I gave this a lot of thought and research and came to somewhat of a conclusion. It seems to be the personal perspectives, experiences, views and so on of an individual that make up their held definition of what math rock is. In short, each person has their own held subjective view of what math rock is. For example, without going into too much detail, when I think of the term math rock, I think of bands such as Hella, Tera, Melos, Don Caballero, Giraffes, Piglets, and so on. These bands I like to think of as structured mayhem, in that the complexities of the arrangement and playing seem to be almost as if they were made up, as if they were improvised. But in truth, they are well rehearsed and played with the utmost care to be as accurate with every rendition. The possibility of each phrase, bar, or section and so on could bring something new, something to be excited about, and after the 50th listen it starts to make sense in your mind. And you start to think it sounds normal until you show it to a mate who's really not into alternative styles of music, and you suddenly realise again how crazy it is. That's not to say other bands that are labelled as math rock aren't math rock to me. I still consider them so. They just come across as more structured in playing and progression. In conclusion, what is clear that it is no easy feat to define what math rock is, as it appears, to me at least, to be a subjective term at best. Math rock is what math rock is to you, and that's just fine. So I wrote that back in 2018, and I think that's a fairly accurate definition. It's just what you think it is. As always, I want to say thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you very much to the patrons that are supporting this channel, and I will see you again in the next video. Goodbye.